Well, good evening, families. Happy New Year to you. We are so excited to be back in session with all of you. We have missed seeing you, although virtual. We get to spend a little bit of time with you. We hope that your new year has started off pretty good. And certainly we want to continue to support your efforts in terms of all the things that are needed to provide educational resources for your scholars. So again, welcome to our second semester of Parents Challenge. Each of you should have received via email the list of all of the sessions for this spring semester. Along with that, you should have also received the document that has the Zoom links, which allows you to register at any time for the sessions. You don't have to wait until it's time for the session. You can register in advance. And we will always send a reminder email with the agenda and any handouts that have been provided by our facilitators. If you've got any questions regarding that, please reach out to us. We also mailed you a packet in the mail. I know some of you received it. Some of you may not have received it. I know the mail is a little slower these days than in the past. And that packet, again, has the same information in it. It has the schedule and it has the Zoom links as well. We're trying to facilitate this process as easy as possible because we know that you're probably inundated with tons and tons of emails from school and work and so forth, because many of you are still operating virtual and your scholars may be doing e-learning. And we're trying to limit the amount of communication we send you with information for sessions. So please keep up with that information. When you register for a session, they will send you a Zoom link. And that is what you use to actually start your participation in the session when it is scheduled. So again, you have to register in advance, or you can register the day of as well. And then you will receive a link that you use to actually participate in the session. So if any of you have questions regarding that, please let us know or send us a message in the chat and then we will respond. But again, good evening, Happy New Year. Anybody who's had any birthdays, happy birthday. Any babies that have been born, congratulations on your new births. Any marriages, I won't say divorces, but any marriages, congratulations on that as well. But we're just excited to be back with you this evening, and we're excited about tonight's topic because it's certainly one that we believe can provide you some awesome resources as we're all dealing with this pandemic and then changes in our whole educational system. Whether you private, public, charter, homeschool, online, there are still things that have impacted all our educational options for our scholars. And therefore, all of us have had to learn how to navigate, be flexible, patience with capital letters, and all of that as we are working through situations. And again, Parents Challenge wants to support you. If you have some needs, please let us know. We did check-ins and found out in terms of some of you, some of the things that you're experiencing, and we've tried to then work with you on an individual level. We will continue to do that. We are reading through all of the journals, a lot of information in there. Thank you so much for taking the time to give us good feedback on what's going on, what you're needing, resources that you've identified that are helping you and your family. Once we have completed those journals, we will also send information out regarding, excuse me, information that you've recommended or resources that you've identified that have been helpful, that may be helpful to others. So again, thank you for that. And as other information becomes available, please let us know, send us that information again, so that we can get it out to everyone. Everyone's dealing with situations differently. So not one size fits all. And we want to provide as many options that may be needed as you are just navigating some of the situations or changes that are occurring for each of you. On the screen, I believe, is the National School Choice Week events on Saturday. Is that on everybody's screen? Give me a thumbs up if it is. Excellent. Okay. So
yes, ma'am, it's there.
So one of the things that we didn't want to do is not do anything. School choice is part of what we do, and it's important to all of you. And we know that many of you have had to make some shifts, and you've had to make some changes based on some of the things that have been happening for your scholars. And some of you have had to look at some other options because school was just not the same, or the resources that you've used in the past have been different. So we wanted to still try to do something to support you, as well as to just create a little bit of fun. So we hope all of you are going to join us for the parade. So typically a parade is all the floats and whatnot come through and you're on the sidelines cheering. Well, this parade is a little different. You get to be cheered at as you're riding through the parade. And all of the cars and floats will be stationary. So they'll be talking to you as you are riding through the event. And then at the end of the event, you'll be able to pick up a bag that has school supplies in it, as well as a swag bag that has flyers and other items that the schools and organizations have put together for you. So we have about 35 vendors that will be attending the parade. So please come out, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, just come by. Probably won't take you more than 10 minutes to get through the parade, and it'll just be fun. And plus, you also get a chance to vote on the best decorated bus, car, or van, along with the school or organization that had the most spirit. So everybody is working hard to just make this a fun event, an outdoor event. You roll your windows down, nobody gets out of their cars. We're maintaining social distancing, and we want to honor that for each of you. Then the second part, which I've sent you information about, and we just need to know who's interested, is the movie and dinner night at the former Sox Stadium, which is now the Rocky Mountain Vive Baseball Stadium. You'll have an opportunity to see the Miss Virginia film, and it's about a mom who spent a lot of time advocating for her child to get the best education possible. It's a great movie. It is family friendly and all of that. But what we're providing is dinner and a movie. And again, we have 3 food trucks that will be there: barbecue, Jamaican, and Mexican. You will get a ticket to order your food, and then turn your radio station to 95.7, and you'll be able to hear the movie through your radio station. So just those of you that are my age or around my age will know about drive-in movies. Some of you that are really young probably have never heard of drive-in movies. So it's just a fun night, a fun opportunity. And so we invite you to attend. Now, if you want to attend, You have to have a ticket. You just can't show up. And with the ticket, if there's 4 people in your car, we will give you 4 tickets. That means you'll get 4 meals for the event. But we have limited space, but I certainly want my families to have the opportunity to attend. So however many you have that are interested in attending, please send that information in the chat or send an email to info@parentschallenge.org. You will have to pick your tickets up at the parade. They will be at will call. So we'll have a will call stop when you're at the end of the parade, and we'll have your tickets with your name on it for you to pick up. So if you have any other questions regarding either of those events, let us know. We are looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. So without any further ado, I am excited to have Nicole and Bradley, who will be our facilitators tonight for resilience and grit. This is an interactive session. So as always, parents, ask questions. Make sure that you stay engaged. This is information that, again, is being used all over the city, all over the United States, really helping individuals to just deal with the situations that we're all faced right now. And how do we have the resilience and grit to make it through? All right, so Nicole and Bradley, you are on. I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, thanks so much, Deborah, and thanks everybody for allowing me the time to talk with you guys today and hopefully share some really important information, important resources. We're also joined today by one of our grit coaches who will introduce herself soon as well, but we'll go ahead and get started with some introductions. Okay, so my name is Nicole Weiss. I am the Peer Support Program Manager and a therapist at the National Institute for Human Resilience. That is a part of the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs school system. We launched our institute actually right around the pandemic time last year, and we're really, really proud to offer a lot of these resources out for our community. I also am a licensed therapist. I'm a licensed addictions counselor and licensed professional counselor, as well as a registered yoga teacher. And I have a client load with the Veterans Health and Trauma Clinic as part of our institute as well. Let's see, a little bit more about me real quick, just as this is a parents group. I am currently growing my first child, so I get to join the Parents Club in 3 hopefully very short months. And I live in the Southeast Springs Security Widefield area. So again, I'm really excited to talk with you guys today and present some of this information, share some information. I would love to answer any questions you have, really talk about resilience and what we can do to foster that in ourselves, in our family, and the people around us. This is my jam. This is what I love to do. So happy to spend the next couple hours with you. I'm going to go ahead and let Bradley introduce himself now.
Hey everybody, I'm Bradley Mallett. I was very lucky and fortunate for Nicole and our boss to invite me onto this team at UCCS. So I'm a contractor with UCCS doing this work, and I've been a part of this, since October-ish, Nicole, I think around then. And so it's definitely been fun. It's been a really great learning experience and a lot of things that I've been able to apply both in my professional and personal life. I, as well, am a licensed professional counselor with the Colorado, certified in EMDR and heart math. So I do a lot of trauma work, a lot of anxiety management. So I think that goes very hand in hand with what's going on with the pandemic. And to kind of piggyback off of what Nicole said, I have my own family as well. Luckily, I'm not in the pregnancy stage anymore. Thank God. That was a fun 10 months that I don't ever want to repeat. But I have my stepson and my daughter, both very young kids. So trying to learn how to navigate the school system with the kid in daycare and a kid in e-learning / in-person learning when they're open has been a fun thing. So there's a lot of this stuff that kind of hits close to home, and hopefully some great information that I could share with you guys of just my own learning experience of, the beginning of this pandemic to where I'm at now, and how kind of this program has really, on a personal level, helped me navigate how to maintain my sanity, within all of this, with having 2 little ones running around. So pleasure to be here tonight.
Thanks, Bradley. And then we're also joined by one of our grit coaches, Latrina. And Latrina, if you're on, you want to pop onto your video and just quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be here. My name is Latrina Ali. I'm the owner of Core Notary, located here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm also the Youth Services Coordinator with Solid Rock Community Development Corporation, located in the southeast side of town. I've been a resident of the southeast side for pretty much my whole life, and I'm a mother of 4. And a grit coach. Sorry, I hopped on the grit training probably at the beginning. I was actually there at the beginning. So I've been a coach since they pretty much offered the course to everyone. So I look forward to telling you guys my experience a little bit later in this training. Thank you.
Thanks, Latrina. So we'll get into what does grit coach even mean. I'm sure a lot of you haven't even heard of what that is. So we'll get into that towards the end of our presentation today. But we really wanted Latrina to be able to share her experiences as well, so you can see how you can really apply this program into your own life. As we get started, I will have the chat box open. Bradley and I will both have it open. If you have questions, comments, food for thought, anything you want to share with the group, flood those into the chat box. We want to make this as interactive as possible, given that we're virtual with over 100 people on here. So definitely share your thoughts and questions as we go through this. And there might be times where we kind of ask you what your experiences have been as well. So to start with, we really want to talk about resilience. And resilience is really, really a buzzword right now. It was literally named the word of the year of 2020. And I think I won't be surprised if it's the word of the year for 2021 as well. And we tend to throw this word around, this concept around, without always understanding what does it mean for me, what does it mean for my family, what does it mean for the people around me. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time first just discussing what is resilience, and then how can we foster that in ourselves and in our family. So what does it mean to be resilient? Resiliency doesn't mean that we are never impacted by stress, or that trauma and stress never impacts us. It would be fantastic if that was true. If just by being resilient, everything just bounces off of me and I feel great and I can get through any kind of stress. That'd be great. It's also not realistic. As one of my, as someone I've listened to a lot of his talks about says, we are profoundly human, which means as we go through life, we are going to experience times of anxiety and depression and stress and frustration and happiness and love and all of these amazing emotions, because we're human. When we do experience stress and trauma, however, our body will go through some automatic responses to prepare our body and get us through that moment. Now, we were biologically designed to be stressed for like 5 minutes at a time, right? We're designed to be walking in a forest and see a bear and know how to get away from the bear if needed. How we've evolved, however, is to be exposed to stress and trauma on an almost regular basis. And so our body wasn't designed to do that part. So we've kind of had to figure out, well, how do I get through the stress in my life then? And when trauma impacts me, it's not for 5 minutes, it's for days, it's for weeks, it's for months sometimes. And how do I get through that? And we get through that by growing our resilience. When we grow resilience, again, it's not that we never feel it, it's that we can bounce back. We have this ability to return to what we would consider a pre-trauma or pre-stress state. So once again, when you experience trauma or stress, your body will go through automatic, we don't even get to choose our response, right? When we're resilient, our body has an easier time coming back to that. What research and experiences have also shown us is that the more we do this, the more and more we have that ability to bounce back, the more resilient we become towards future hardships as well. Now, the trick is sometimes we don't always remember how we got through certain events, or we just grit our teeth and before we know it, we're past the finish line and we're through it. And we don't always take the time to think, well, how did I get through that? What got me through that? Who did I talk to? Who did I lean on? And so resiliency is a little piece of that as well, of reflecting on those experiences and figuring out, okay, if I'm exposed to this again, what do I do next time? So the experience, oh, go ahead, Bradley.
I just want to ask a quick question to all of you. And again, y'all can vocalize or you can type in the chat, but who here has a example of resilience that you've done outside of the pandemic? So just moving away from the pandemic for a quick second, what's a great example that all of you share in common of resilience?
This is a great question.
And it's not a trick question, I promise. It's a very straightforward question that hopefully, yes.
Yes.
Being a parent, going through illnesses, having children. Yes. Oh, I'm loving all this. Think about, I don't know about you, on deployment is another great example, especially with the military and everything. And then especially being a family member of somebody that's in the service that's deployed. Have any of you all experienced that beforehand? Because I remember when I had my first kid, I had no idea how to handle a screaming child. Or I think about for those loved ones whose, partner is deployed and never having experienced that. The fact that you're here today shows that you already do resilience because you're alive and you're still standing and that you haven't quit. Oh, job changes, moving. Again, perfect examples of resilience of you get used to a job and then going to a new job and figuring out how to adapt to that. That is resiliency at its core, is us doing uncomfortable things, be it by choice or not by choice, and surviving and moving forward. So I wanted to just take a quick moment just to help you all realize you're already doing resilience. The fact that each and every one of you is here, you all have been engaging in resilience for the past almost year straight with this pandemic. So just keep that in mind of you all already do resilience every day, especially as parents, right? As you finally get used to the toddler stage and then they move on to the next stage, right? Or if you have teenagers, you got used to the little kids and then they're teenagers, a whole other thing. So just take comfort in realizing you're already engaging in resilience every single day of your lives. So I just wanted to kind of throw that quick plug out there in case anybody's being like, man, maybe I'm not good at resilience or I don't have resilience. You do because you're here. So just keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, as you guys have shown in the chat, you've been through things, and I think that's such a big takeaway is we have all been through stress and we're still standing here. And sometimes it can be helpful to look back and ask, what got me through that? So that's where this goes, right? The experience of that stress alone does not simply create the resiliency. Again, it'd be great, just not realistic. Instead, it's how we successfully cope through that experience that's important, and that helps build us up time and time again. So first, it's effectively utilizing resources around us. So again, think back about the stressful experiences you have gone through, parenthood, pregnancy. I'll tell you, I thought I was prepared. Whew. Deployments, in-laws, somebody named in-laws that made me laugh, getting married, all of these experiences. What resources did you have around you, right? And did you effectively use those? You guys are part of this amazing group of Parents Challenge, right? You have these resources available to you. And it's because you decided to take on that extra, help. You decided to seek out some of that assistance and to utilize that in front of you, right? So look back at those experiences. What helped you get through it? The next is, how did you flexibly cope through it? We're all going to have days where the stress hits us harder. And most of us have some pretty go-to coping skills. I know I do, right? My coping skills, typically I walk my dog. If I'm feeling stressed and I need a minute, I just go outside and I walk, right? That's not always possible. And I'm learning now as I run out of breath in like 3 seconds of walking, it's not always feasible, right? So sometimes we have to flexibly cope. The pandemic has also taught this, because a lot of our coping skills have been taken away from us, whether that was coffee with friends and venting and getting some social support in person with someone, or traveling or seeing family. Some of those coping skills got taken away. So how can we flexibly cope and figure out what are other ways to use my coping skills? What are other things I can do to bring relaxation and de-stress my life? I used to work with kids a lot in a crisis center. And so when parents or kids were going through especially difficult times, I would sit down with them and I'd talk them through kind of what's going on for them and how do we get through this. And one of my favorite exercises to do with kids was I would give them this list of 100 activities that tend to make people feel happy, or what we would then call coping skills. And I'd have the kids go through and highlight 5 to 10 activities that they can do. And I loved this exercise because, one, it showed kids especially that there are dozens and hundreds and thousands of ways to feel better and to cope through a situation. Aisha, yeah, I can send a list of activities to Deborah for her to share on. So it taught us, not only are there tons of activities I can do, I also have control over those activities too, right? So if I'm having a bad day, I have multiple things at my exposure to try and to practice and to make myself feel a little bit better. It's also about actively managing our own personal distress. So as I said, we are profoundly human. We are going to have times where stress hits us. We're going to have times where we wake up feeling anxious, or we just are feeling down or just in the dumps that day. Part of that is just the human experience. For other people, it's also working through some mental health challenges as well, right? Maybe we do have an underlying anxiety or depression disorder, or any of the other plethora of disorders we could possibly have. But sometimes we just have those days. Resiliency is looking at that and being self-aware about that and actively managing it. So if you're noticing you're anxious, can you take that time to work on some of those coping skills? Can you take 10 minutes and do some stretches or deep breathing, get the kids involved, do some yoga together, but can you take that time to recognize what you're going through and work on actively managing it? Holly, you said Jesus and chocolate. I love it. Chocolate is always a coping skill for me. So good. And it's also the ability to seek opportunities to help other people. This is like one of my favorite things about resilience, because we tend to think about resilience as, what do I need to do? How does it impact me? What are things that I need to do to make myself feel better? And as those first 3 things have highlighted, there's plenty, but it's also about helping other people out. And the more we help other people, the more our own resilience grows. And it's this beautiful cyclical relationship we can have. So think about who in your life could use a little extra support, whether that's your kids, your neighbor, your family, whoever. And can you take a little bit of time to reach out and do something for them or with them as well? And then finally, resilience grows by being able to respond to those setbacks in life, paired with perceptions of self-efficacy and positive self-worth. Now, self-efficacy is a new word for you. It's understandable. It was a new word for me for a long time. But Dr. Charles Benight is my director boss. He's also one of the lead researchers on self-efficacy. So luckily I've gotten a lot of schooling on this. But self-efficacy is that voice inside you that says, I can do this, that I see a goal or a challenge or a roadblock or whatever we want to call them in front of me. And a little voice says, yeah, but I bet you can do it anyway. That's self-efficacy. And we grow it, again, through so many different ways. But mostly it's by setting these little goals for ourselves and getting through it anyway. So a good example, or a classic example, is if anybody is a runner or has tried to be a runner, like I have tried to be a runner, my body says after 3 miles, you're done. But if you've ever tried, or if you have ever run a marathon or done any of those races, you didn't wake up the day you decided to do that race and run a 5K, right? Very, very, very likely you didn't. If you did, fantastic. But most of us wake up and say, I really want to run this race. I really want to learn how to run a 5K, or I really want to run a marathon. And so I'm going to start with learning how to run a mile. And once that feels okay, I'll run maybe a mile and a half, maybe, right? And once my body learns that I can do that, then I can get to 2 and I can work up. And maybe I get to the point where I can run a 5K. Maybe I can get to the point where I run a marathon, right? But the point is I've set this goal in mind, and then I've slowly worked towards it, because that goal, the goals I have set have been achievable for me. So Deborah, you said running after 1 block, I stop. Hey, like I said, for me, a marathon is a 5K. My body just quits. I have been trying to run for years, and my body's like, nah, you're good. You're good after 3 miles. no, don't do this anymore. But for other people, right? My boss, again, Dr. Charles Benight, he runs up the Pikes Peak thing. I can't do that. But for him, that's an achievable goal. And that's our self-efficacy. So again, let's use the chat box and think about what goal have you set in mind and how did you get there, right? How did you build those little steps to get to the point where you earned a degree, or again, you ran a race, or you learned how to play the piano, or you did something that was a goal in mind and you built up to it. Bradley, can you think of something you've done?
Yeah, definitely. So I got two things. So one, just to go along with the joke, running 7 miles a day, right? You know, I remember.
Lucky you.
Right. So that was definitely starting off with just running down the block and then slowly building it up. And, you know, so there's that one. But I think of another goal was getting my master's, right? And working full time. You know, that was a huge struggle of, you know, working 40 hours a week and then doing, you know, 20 plus hours a week of school and, you know, learning how to do that, but also, and something we'll talk about later, but also about utilizing the supports around me to build me up to accomplish this rather than trying to do it on my own. And I think that's another thing that self-efficacy, you know, talks about is, yes, it's about how we build ourselves up, but it's also about what we bring around us to build ourselves up, right? And that could be anything from pets, friends, colleagues, you know, parents, siblings, you know, the people around us to bring us to that point.
Oh, and I'm just loving these examples coming in. You guys are showing so much resilience here. And again, how you've set a goal and gotten through it. It's beautiful. So what I also want to talk about with this is that we can apply this self-efficacy to the trauma in our life as well. When we experience those significant stressors, trauma in itself, that's something that can be difficult to conceptualize or define. There's a lot of different kind of definitions of what is trauma. But basically you think about what is significant stress. And again, how did I get through it? Most of us have been through something that someone would consider traumatic. And how we got through it was by building that self-efficacy. So I'll use my own example of, it's been 3 years now. 3 years ago, 3 weeks before my wedding day, I woke up at 2 a.m. to a fire 3 feet from my feet, right? So I literally woke up staring at fire. Lost the major portion of my front house, had to obviously evacuate my house and my dogs, didn't think about, right? You have that moment of what would I grab in the middle of a fire? Didn't think, just grabbed my pets and left, right? And it was 3 weeks before my wedding and my wedding dress burned, because of course it burned, right? And so I remember sitting in my car, watching the firefighters do their thing and being like, how do I possibly get through the next hour of my life? And then I did, right? And then before I knew it, it was a couple of days later. And I was sitting there with my soon-to-be husband and we were leaning on each other and we were talking about how do we get through this together? And then I reflected on this support system that was coming out of the woodworks towards me, right? And feeling like, how do I help you get through this? What do you need? You know, lean on me, because that's what a support system is there for. And I learned that if I could take it just day by day, it didn't feel as overwhelming, right? So there's my little goal setting, right? I don't have to think about how do I get married in 3 weeks. I just think about how do I get through today? And then before I knew it, I did. And then before I knew it, I'd gotten married and we were on our way to a honeymoon and having, you know, this weight lifted off of us, still having to deal with all this stress. My house was still burned, right? But I could breathe a little because I realized the support I had around me. So that's self-efficacy. So you don't have to give examples if you don't want to for this one, but think about those moments in your life too, where you've gone through real significant stress and in what people would consider trauma. And that can be, you know, car accidents, losing loved ones. Worse than that, unfortunately, that's also profoundly human experiences. But we've gone through these experiences and you're still standing here today. So what got you through it? And how did you build the self-efficacy? How did you listen to that voice that said, I can do this, right? So again, feel free to share if you want to share, but that one's a little bit extra personal, so you don't have to. So then we want to talk about how do we apply these concepts? How do we build resilience? in our families, right? Because now we've got little ones or bigger ones, right, that we're also helping manage and work through and build their own resilience. And it has been one heck of a year of learning resilience. So Bradley, I'm going to let you take it away on this one. And how do we build resilience in our own families?
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. So, as it says, and I'll try not to read verbatim because I know that always drives me crazy whenever I'm at a presentation and a person is just reading verbatim. So I'll try to do my best to be a little bit more original. But, at the end of the day, right, building resilience within the family does start with you. Okay. And, I think that the key piece that comes with that is we are that driving force, right? We set the example, regardless of what our relationship might be with our family, regardless if it's really positive or we're struggling and we're trying to build that back up due to other factors happening in our lives. It ultimately does start with you and the example that you put forth. And I think that's something that can be really hard of resilience, is that you're in the middle of it just as your family is too. I think that's what makes all of this so tough for some people, not for everybody, but for some. And again, I'll only speak of myself is, it's one thing as a therapist to recommend to clients, right? Well, hey, let's start working on this. Let's do this. But it's another thing when you are a part of that struggle, right? So I think about the current pandemic that we're all going through. That's all of us. We are all going through this. Nobody is removed from this. Even if you're in a little bunker and you got, everything walled off, we're still in it. And so that's where it does ultimately come from us and looking at what am I doing to set that example. And so so one thing that I would want to kind of talk with you all about is let's think about how things were at the beginning and then how life has changed for each and every one of you as you gained that resilience, as you gained that self-efficacy, I always stumble on that word, to where you're at now, right? Because I don't know about you all, but one of the things that I had to learn how to do within this was learning how to let go of the expectations and standards that I had for myself and my family. And so, like it says here, give yourself permission for that self-care and permission to take a break. So I'm curious, and this is a question that I would like all of you to reflect on. And if you want to write in the chat, fantastic. If you don't, that's okay too. But before the pandemic started, who actually gave themselves permission to take a break? Right? Because, and I love what Kelly just said right there, right? It's so hard to let go of expectations because society has built us up to have expectations. This is the way things are supposed to be. This is the way things need to be. And it can be really hard to let those go, which then goes into that next part of offering forgiveness and grace to yourself. So I don't know about you all, but I'm going to really focus mainly here on individuals with little kids, right? So those kids that are in school from kindergarten to like 5th grade. Think about what your expectations were for your kiddos and for yourself at the beginning of this pandemic compared to where it's at now. Because I remember when this first started and I was on my kids every day, like, you got to do the work, you got to sit here, you got to pay attention, you need to be calm. Right? Because of the expectations of how kids have to learn, how we have to be as parents, because I don't want to look bad. I don't want the teacher thinking I'm not doing enough for my kid. And so learning throughout this process of, I got to a point of self-acceptance, like, if my kid's a little bit behind when he goes back to school, that's okay. I'll help him out down the road. And so this idea of offering forgiveness and grace to ourselves is saying, we're doing the best that we can. And that's where, again, this idea of it starts with you comes into play of we have to remember we are dealing with something that we've never dealt with before. I don't know about any of you, but I've never been in a pandemic before. Maybe some of you have, but I haven't. This is the first time I've ever been locked in my house for longer than, a day. Like, I've been stuck in my house basically for a year. And there's no roadmap. There's no rule book. And so again, give yourself permission to have that self-care. Give yourself that permission to ask a loved one, ask a family member, can you take over so I can go on a walk? So I think about Nicole, right? She mentions going on a walk with her dogs. Give yourself permission to say, I need to take a break and I'm going for a walk. Giving yourself permission to say, you know what? I'm going to let my kid watch 5 hours of TV straight today, because if I don't, I'm going to lose it. And again, I grew up in the time where, I saw the VCR, there was no Netflix and all that stuff like we got now, so I had to manually go to Blockbuster and go pick up movies, right? Whereas our kids now, have that streaming, and learning how to handle those changes that maybe we weren't prepared for, but we have to give ourselves permission to say that, you know what, today is going to be a lazy day. Today is going to be a day that I'm doing the pajamas. I'm not getting dressed. I'm not taking a shower. I wouldn't encourage y'all to do that, for days at a time. But, if one day I say, forget the shower, I'm just going to kind of just be in my, clothes I was wearing yesterday, I can give myself permission to do that. Because if I don't take care of me, then how can I take care of my family? How can I be there if I'm not there for myself? And you know what, Candace, I love what you just said there. Sometimes we do need a moment to just cry. And again, going back to those expectations of, and especially I'm gonna talk to the men here, the expectations of, as a man, I have to be the backbone of my family. Well, you know what? Sometimes my wife's the backbone of the family, and I need to reach out to her. That doesn't mean that I'm weak. It's the reason why I love her, and it's the reason why I married her, because I want a partner in life. And so one of the things that we want to model for the family to bring about change is, how do we work together? And I think that's something that the pandemic has taught us, is that it really does take a village. Like even just seeing this group of all of you and how you're all supporting one another. A year ago, I don't know if that kind of behavior would be out there. Maybe this group did that, but I think about just society in general. It was always the me culture. Whereas now, I see on Facebook of people like, hey, we'll do school at my house today. We'll do school at your house tomorrow, to support one another. But it does start with you. It starts with each and every one of us making those individual changes and letting go of what I have always believed that things have to be. Because at the end of the day, the stress that all of us are under is something that I don't think any of us have dealt with. Because again, biologically, right, as Nicole talked about earlier, stress was supposed to be something that's for 5 minutes and we move on from it. But we've been in a literal chronic stress for a year, and new stress happening every day without knowing what should we expect next. And that's a hard thing to manage. So I want to ask you all, when you think about the idea of letting go of expectations, both of yourself, your partners, your children, what does that mean for you? This idea of, I'm going to let go of the expectations that I have for myself.
I love that question, Bradley. And I think it's part of that point too, of offer forgiveness and grace to yourself, because we tend to have these high expectations for ourselves. We tend to think, or to say, I should, right? I don't care how you end that. If you're saying I should, you're putting yourself at a big expectation. I should be handling this better. I should do better at self-care. I should take more showers. I should eat more healthy food. I should, right? And we therapists have this fun, tongue-in-cheek saying of, don't should yourself, right? It's okay. It's okay. Forgive yourself for that. As Bradley said, we didn't expect to be in a pandemic. We didn't expect to be in a pandemic, period. We didn't expect to be in a pandemic this long. See, we still don't know when that's over, right? So don't should yourself right now. Offer yourself the forgiveness to say, it's okay. It's okay that I didn't take a shower today. It's okay that I'm not eating the healthiest of food. We can work on that, and we're going to talk about how do you work on that, right? So there are things that we can do when we recognize that there are things that we want to do better with. But first, it's okay if you're not fully there right now. Nobody is, I don't think. And as for the cry comment, I just wanted to add too, I have a go-to cry movie, because my body needs to cry sometimes, and I have a hard time with that. And so when my body needs it, I watch my cry movie, I dump it all out, and then I'm like, whew, I can breathe again, right? Sometimes we need that. So I love everything you guys are sharing. It's so amazing.
Well, and Nicole, I love what you said, because I think there's a big thing to take into account when we think of the word should. As adults, we have created expectations. But I don't know about you all, but my kids don't have expectations. My children only have the expectations that I have taught them. And so keeping that in mind, right, of our children don't really know what should means, right? A kid should be dressed. I can't tell you how many times that my son has done e-learning in his pajamas because he's behind a computer. Nobody knows what he's wearing. And why should my son have to get dressed to stay in the house all day? Now, again, I still, give him a shower every day, so he's still wearing new clothes, the next day. But why should my son have to do that? Now, if he wants to, by all means, I'm going to honor that. But this idea of what we should do in times where we have no idea what we should do doesn't really make a lot of sense. We're setting ourselves up to fail, which then goes to the next piece of focus on what you can control. Now, this idea we have to be careful about, though, because that can also turn into a toxic and unhealthy level of resilience. And what I mean by that is I can control my house, right? I can control the temperature. I can control my kids' wear. I can control what's being made. But to what extent is that healthy? And so again, going back to the example of my son in regards to, letting him being in pajamas for e-learning for the morning, it's like, do I need to control that? Is that going to create stability or stress? My son's doing the best that he can. I'm doing the best that I can. Do I need to put that pressure on him today? Well, maybe next week I will, but maybe this week, I'm just going to focus on making sure that there's a healthy meal that's made, that there's good family playtime, and I'm going to let my kid wear whatever the heck he wants to wear. I think about this morning as I was taking my daughter to daycare. I wake her up to go get her dressed. And of course, even though she picked out her clothes last night, the second she saw the shirt that I was going to put on her, she's like, no, I don't want that. And so I should, because she picked out the clothes, force her to do that, because that's one thing that I can control. Or another thing that I can control is just allowing her to go pick out a new shirt, because who cares? Does it matter? And I think that's a hard expectation. And yes, Lene, I think you're exactly right. You can't fight every battle. That is something you can control, right? I can control not to fight every single battle. I can control which battles, which discussions I want to address today. And I saw a meme the other day, and it has stuck with me since. If your kid won't eat anything but a cookie, let them eat the darn cookie. Within moderation, of course, but sometimes just let them have the darn cookie, because is it worth it today? Maybe tomorrow I'll set that boundary, but I'm going to focus on what I can control today, and that's I want a quiet household. So have the darn cookie.
And Kat, you make a really good point here too, that this does vary by person, right? And that's where we mean by pick those battles in your life, pick what's important to you. And when it comes to that aspect of control, one of the things that our body biologically does not like is the unknown. We get very overwhelmed when there's no answer, right? And it tends to make us feel like I don't have control over anything in my life. I feel hopeless. I feel helpless. It expands so quickly, right? And so when you're feeling that, when you're feeling like I have lost all control in my life, think instead about what you do have control over, right? And maybe that is, I can clean my house today. Maybe that is, I can let my kid pick out his own clothing, right? It's really that independent factor for you. And all it's doing is reminding your brain, it's not all so big. And it doesn't have to all be so big. I can narrow this down a little bit, and I can choose some things to focus on. And when we do that, the brain goes, oh, okay. It's not so overwhelming anymore. There's the unknown still out there, but it doesn't feel so big when I can narrow down and focus on the littles.
And to piggyback off of that even further, guys, I think what Melanie said in the chat is something I want to point out. So Melanie said, you sound like a really cool dad. What's funny is we need to be careful about that stuff. And let me tell you why. Melanie, I appreciate the statement. I'm going to hold on to that. Like, yes, I am a cool dad. But one thing we always have to be careful about is not comparing ourselves to others, right? That is another thing that we can control is I will not compare myself to you. So I think it's really easy when people talk, what they post on Facebook, right? It makes people think like, oh, they got their crap together. Oh, they're doing things perfect. But the reality is that they're still going through their own things, but we only show what we want the world to hear. So, I think about everything that I just said, right? It probably does sound like I'm a really nice dad. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have some really bad days where I yell at my kids. I have some really bad days where I lock myself in my room because I need a break, right? And so some ways of focusing on what you can control is recognizing I am not going to compare myself to any other parent except myself and the parent I want to be, right? So it's really easy for me to say, just let my son have a cookie. That's taken me like 7 months to get to that point where I'm okay with just saying, have the cookie, right? Because the first 7 months, I had these expectations of how things were supposed to be. And yet my stress level would keep rising every day because I was like, well, you need to do this. And it's like, no, I don't. And then, so going on to that next point of ask what got you through stress in the past. Well, one of the things that gets us through stress in the past is letting go of expectations, honoring what our heart is telling us, and following through with what is right, not what is expected. Sometimes that's the right thing, but sometimes what's right is honoring me. And then this next piece, right? Choose one thing to focus on each day. So I have a reminder that goes off on my cell phone at 7 o'clock every morning, which is take a break with your kids. Okay. That is the one thing I try to focus on every day is do something enjoyable. So one thing that I do is I walk my kid to school. I'm very fortunate that my son's school is within walking distance. And then I pick him up from school every day. Because that's at least one thing I can control. I can't control that my son can't play with everybody in the neighborhood. I can't control that, there's bad weather. But I can control holding my son's hand and walking to school. That is something that is in my control that brings me joy. Now, whether or not my son likes it, who knows? But I know that I like that. And that is a great way for me to start my day, right? Or yeah, like you said in there, giving your kid a ride to school or letting your son throw a snowball at you, right? That's what you can control. You can control today to say, I'm not going to yell at my kid because they want to play with me. I'm going to play with them. I'm going to act like a kid today for 5 minutes, right? Those are the things that you get to decide, which then goes on to the next one of keep a routine, schedule when possible, and keep boundaries, right? Boundaries to yourself, boundaries to your family, boundaries to that self-care, and keeping that routine and schedule when possible. However, not having the expectation that you must keep that routine and schedule. Because here's the reality. Life happens. Sometimes we get sick. Sometimes there's a blizzard, right? So I have a routine of I wake my kids up at 7 o'clock every morning and I get them dressed for school. So of course I did that. And then lo and behold, I get a message from my daughter's daycare. We're closed. And I'm like, I just woke my daughter up to get a message that you're closed, right? And then I had to change the routine. And so I bring that example up to remind all of you, routines and schedules are beautiful things, but they were also designed to be flexible. So maybe you're running a little bit late. Okay, be flexible with that and ask yourself, what can I do different tomorrow? What can I control tomorrow to set myself up for success? So maybe I'm going to select all my clothes out the night before so I don't have to think about it in the morning. Maybe I'm going to lay out my kids' clothing the night before so it's one less thing to do, right? Adapt as you need to, because that's another part of self-efficacy and resilience is adapting to what's changing. But when we hold on to rigidity and feel that everything has to be a certain way, that's when we're setting ourselves up for failure. Now, again, there is beauty in structure. There is calmness in structure. But we also need to remember that sometimes we have to be flexible. And again, adaptation. We have to adapt to survive. Because think about how the world was, hundreds of years ago, where people were, pissing outside. Like, I don't want to live in a world like that. I like having my bathroom and my privacy. I like that we don't all smell like we've been sweating for days, and that we have the luxury of having showers, right? We have to adapt to survive, but adapt as a unit.
And I want to pause real quick because Linda, I saw that your hand was up. Did you have a question real quick? Zoom.
No, it was an accident. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say Zoom plays funny tricks on us. I just wanted to make sure.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
I'll be quiet now. Love you guys.
You're okay.
Now, a big one, and so anybody that's ever done biofeedback or heart math will know this, but mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness is a beautiful thing. Okay, taking a moment, be that a minute, 30 seconds, 10 minutes, an hour, take a moment to be mindful of what is happening in this moment. Taking a moment to watch the sun, taking a moment to watch the snowfall, taking a moment to just sit and watch your children, watch your loved one playing or sitting there, right? Being in a state of mindfulness can create so much harmony because it can help us to identify what do we need to change. And it allows us to then ask that next question of what brings us joy, right? What actually makes me happy? Does it make me happy having tension in the house, or does it make me happy having people relaxed? And my wife said a beautiful thing to me the other day, because I was getting frustrated with the kids, because I wanted things to be a certain way. And she's like, remember, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We can put the standards back after things go back to normal or to whatever normal looks like. We don't have to hold on. And so that was in reference to, I hate when my kids are on technology all day. But if I'm having to work, my kid has to be on technology all day so I could still do my job and keep a roof over our heads, right? And so asking myself, what's going to bring me more joy? Arguing with my kids or hearing my kids laughing and having smiles on the face? Yes, maybe we're going to have a little bit more candy, a few more cookies. They're going to be on TV longer than I want. But if it brings me joy to see them happy, then let's do that. Now, again, in moderation, I don't want every day to be like that, but some days it's okay. And again, that last piece of keep things in perspective. And so not to be a broken record, but we're in a pandemic. We can let it go for a little bit. We can let our expectations slide away just for today. And maybe tomorrow I'm going to really buckle down and there's going to be no tech and it's going to be no tech night together. But you know what, today, because I want to keep things in perspective of my kids didn't ask for this, my kids aren't old enough to fully grasp what's happening, I got to keep them in mind. Because if I was them, what would I want? Would I want to be in complete silence by myself? Or would I want to have maybe the Xbox or the Nintendo or the TV or the tablet on for a little bit? And Lacey, I love what you just said there. I want to go lay in the snow again, too.
I want to go lay in the snow. It's all I can think about now is just like glistening snow all around me on like a warm day. I got such a beautiful visual. I also want to piggyback real quick on Laurel's comment of saying Nebraska's governor said, stop expecting life to look like it used to. This is such an important point because we tend, again, expectations, shoulds, we keep thinking, when will we go back to normal? We won't. Not normal as a year ago. We will feel a sense of normalcy again. That is true. That is a fact. We will feel that again. It just won't look like what it did last year or the year before that. It won't look like what we perceive right now as normal. It'll be different. And this is a big conversation you can have with your kids as well. So as I mentioned, Bradley and I are both therapists. I'm a therapist for a teenager right now. And in the fall, he had that question of when's it going to go back to normal? When's it going to get better? When? You know, and it was this heaviness of just, it's never going to be the same. And I said, yeah, kid, it's not going to be the same. it will feel better again. That I can tell you. I cannot tell you when, I cannot tell you how, but it will eventually have a sense of normalcy again, because that's the way we function in life. We will get used to how things are going. But as Derek just said, normal is what we make it, right? So we will feel that again. And in the meantime, let's keep it in perspective that this is hard right now, right? I saw this, again, meme or something that went around that said, everything I do lately, everything I talk about, I end it with in a pandemic, right? I did the dishes today in a pandemic. Right? But it's important to recognize that the stress we feel anyway is amplified right now because we're in a pandemic and we don't know when it's going to be over. And that's hard. Normal is just a setting on your dryer. Absolutely. We don't know. We can't even define it. So again, we will get to a sense where things feel okay again. We just don't know when or what that's going to look like right now. And that's okay. And it's okay to have those conversations with your kids as well. Because we're going to get to that in just a second. Kids feel it much bigger than we feel it as adults.
And I think another thing too, to piggyback off of the normal discussion is normal can change every day. Maybe the normal for this week is going to be this. I think about holidays, right? You got December, that's your big, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa month. You got November, that's your big Thanksgiving month, right? You got October, that's your Halloween month, et cetera, right? So the normal of October is to be scary. The normal in November is to be thankful. The normal in December is to be giving and receiving and spending time with family. Well, that's the same thing here too, is your normal, you can change it every day if you want. Your normal, you can change it every week. Maybe the normal for this week is it's tech week. The normal for next week will be no tech. The normal for the week after that will be half tech, half no tech. The normal after that is we're going to be huge into hiking. You get to create your normal. So keep that in perspective of you get to define that. Nobody else. Doesn't matter what everybody else is saying on Facebook. It's your house, your family, your creation.
As we get through this, we want to talk about what does stress look like in kids, right? Because this is one of the big reasons why you're here. We want to talk about resilience. We want to talk about stress, and it looks different in kids. Just want to make sure I'm getting all these comments real quick. Okay, so
love all these comments, by the way.
Such great comments. So first, I want to highlight that what we're expecting this year is that mental health concerns will impact more and more of our youth, about 1 in 6. And what they expect is that our current youth, our current generation is going to see the current pandemic the way that prior generations before us saw the Great Depression. So, and I don't mean it to say like, doom and gloom, but let's take this moment to really consider our kids' mental health as well and what we can do about it, which is what we're going to get into. So we want to talk about how as the rate increases in community crises, as we have more of that stress in community, we're also going to expect to see a higher number of kids experiencing anxiety, depression, disruptive behavior problems, sleep disruptions, substance use even, symptoms of suicide even. And I know that, again, might feel scary to talk about, but it's important that we talk about and destigmatize being able to talk about some of these things. Some of these things, anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, even behavior problems, hey, we're profoundly normal, or we're profoundly human, right? Now I've got normal in my brain. We're profoundly human. We're going to have some of these experiences. And kids oftentimes don't have the words to describe how they're feeling. And so it comes out in different ways. And recognizing if my kid is feeling more anxious right now, what might be going on to worsen that, or what's going on that maybe I can help him talk about or talk through, right? And then of course we want to pay special attention if we have kids using substances or having any statements or thoughts of harming self or others. We have some amazing crisis resources here in town. Utilize those if you need that. That's what they're there for. So as we have kids experiencing these things, we also want to think about what does it look like for them and how might they be experiencing it. So concern in our kids looks a little differently than how we express our concerns. So Bradley, why don't you share on this one? What are the concerns that we might see in kids, or how does it come across?
Yeah, so when you think about that stuff, it's going to be, right, those sleep disturbances, right, or that irritability, right, or even wanting to have social lives and wanting to spend time with friends or do things outside that we can't do anymore. Worrying about finances, worrying about those how the family is doing, and kids are going to look at things very differently because they're so in the present, right? Whereas we're thinking about the future. We're thinking, months from now, years from now. Our children get so focused in the moment. So they might be oversleeping. They might be isolating themselves. They might be focusing on what they can't have tomorrow. And so we always need to be mindful during these times of, just because maybe for you as an adult, depression looks this way or anxiety looks this way, for kids it's going to look vastly different. And so always making sure that when you're trying to identify with your kids on how they're doing, taking it in from the child perspective. So if they're complaining about not having time to watch TV, really looking at what does that mean for them? As an adult, we see that one way, but for a kid, they see it another way. Right. And so maybe they're refusing to do things or they're lashing out at us. That could be their anxiety, right? That could be their feelings. And a lot of times we personalize it, but it has nothing to do with us. This is how they're coping and this is how they're acting out. And so it's on us to provide that comfort and love instead of you're complaining about wanting to see your friends when, there's a pandemic going on. They don't realize it the same way as we do. They're lonely, they're sad, they're missing how things used to be. And they're thinking a pandemic is just a sickness. Whereas adults, we recognize that a pandemic is a disease that doesn't just go away because you wash your hands and you want it to go away. It's much bigger than that.
And one thing I want to highlight on this list too is that things feel unfair right now. That's fair. That's fair to say. And it's okay to talk to your kids about that. Things are feel unfair for a lot of us, right? And that's something that we're going to have to work through and figure out together, right? And we'll get into some of that in just a second. So I wanted to share this quick video with everyone. And if you love it, I really encourage you to watch it with your kids, especially younger kids. It kind of fits a little bit better with their language. But this is a really great example of how we can talk about stress and how we experience stress in our bodies. So I wanted to show this real quick. And the sound should work, but Zoom. So if you can't hear it, let me know real quick.
You know that scared or nervous feeling you get when you have to do something you're not sure you can do? Or go somewhere you've never been before? That feeling is called anxiety. And it can feel a bit different for each person, but it usually doesn't feel very nice. Maybe your palms get sweaty, or your body tenses up, or maybe you get a tummy ache. Maybe you've heard of anxiety, or maybe you haven't, but you've definitely felt it before. Because everyone feels it sometimes. It's normal. You want to know something really weird about anxiety? It's actually trying to help you. It's true. All those uncomfortable feelings, those happen because your brain thinks you're in danger and it wants to protect you. When our muscles tense up and we sweat, it gets us ready to do a lot of exercise, which is helpful if you need to jump out of the way of a runaway train or wrestle a wolverine. Sometimes our minds go blank and we feel like we can't move or talk. That would be great if we needed to hide. Instead, we just feel stuck. When your brain does this, it's called fight, flight, or freeze. The problem is, sometimes your brain gets confused and it can't tell the difference between a charging moose and, say, going to a new school. Both things can be scary and cause anxiety. But there aren't any dangerous wild animals at a new school, hopefully. Understanding where anxiety comes from is the first step in learning to deal with it. So the next time you're in one of those tough situations and you start to feel those feelings, like butterflies in your stomach or sweaty palms, or it gets hard to talk or move, remember, there's nothing wrong with your body. You're just having normal feelings of anxiety, and they're actually trying to help. even if they're not very good at it sometimes.
All right, so again, short little video. I encourage you guys to, I did something with my chat box, hold on. Show this to your kids if you feel like it'd be helpful. I want to quickly go back to the chat real quick too, because what a lot of you are talking about too is communication, and how it's really important for us to communicate with our kids. And I think sometimes we get a little scared about, I don't know how to have these conversations. I don't want to scare them. I don't want, them to feel any certain way. But the more our kids understand stress, the more they understand how to work through that stress, the better. So definitely have those conversations. I also saw that a few of you guys feel like your families are killing it, doing great. Wonderful. That's so great. Share that with other families, share that with other people around you. Definitely, that's, again, we grow resilience by talking with other people and supporting one another. So how are you getting through it, and how can you share that with other people? Okay. So real briefly, as we get through kind of talking about resilience here, these are just some kind of key strategies or ways that you can work on supporting resilience in your own family if this is something that you want to grow a little bit more within your own little community network here. So as I just said, talk about your feelings. It's okay. Oftentimes with kids, they don't have the words, right? They know they don't feel good, but they don't know how to express that. So one thing you can do is sit down with them and say, do you feel anxious? Do you feel sad? Do you feel nervous, right? So give them some options and then see what they select, see what they pick from that. And then talk about what does that look like or feel like, and have a conversation about what does anxiety feel like for you, right? So communicate, talk about those feelings, normalize talking about those feelings. As we said before, creating a schedule and routine and sticking to it when possible can be helpful. Kids actually do tend to do better with structure and routine. So if that's something that has been impacted by the pandemic or changes in and out of school, what kind of routine or structure can you keep within the household to feel a little bit more structured, right? So typically school is 8 to 5. Can we create a similar kind of structure in our home when that feels good, when that feels doable? Create a family contingency plan. So I don't know if anybody here has listened to Brené Brown. She's phenomenal, by the way. She has a wonderful podcast. But Brené Brown is a big researcher on resilience and self-care and just all good things. And one day I was listening to her podcast and she mentioned that her family has a contingency plan, which means that when they come home, they check in about what percent they're at. So if her kid comes home and says, I'm at 50% today, that means that he's pretty tired, he's pretty worn down, and he feels like he can only be present at about 50% of his normal, right? And she would then say, I'm at 80%, so I'll take over a little bit more today, right? But the point of that is you check in with your family and you check in if things aren't going well for one member, how can the rest of the members rally and support each other? And if nobody's doing well, then what is the plan for that? If we're all having a bad day, then it's a pizza and a movie night day, right? Period. That's our contingency plan. Or if dad comes home and he's had a really rough day, then we cook dinner for dad today, right? That's our contingency plan. But have that conversation as a family to say, if this, then this, right? And have that conversation. Talk about safety and practice safety behavior. So this was especially true in the beginning of the pandemic, still kind of true today. I see there's some comments here about what are we doing about safety and quarantining and all of that. Have those conversations with your kids too. If they have a hard time wearing masks and that's the new normal for us, practice wearing masks so they get used to that and they accept that that's an okay behavior, right? Have weekly family time. This might be really easy for some people who are pretty rooted in the house. This might be harder for some people whose parents are working outside the house or working at home and having to juggle a lot. So have a structured or planned family time, preferably away from electronics, away from Zoom and the computer if you can, play board games, things like that, but have a set of time where it's just family. Engage in fun activities that matter. So this is really important because it means things like recycle together, volunteer together, bake cookies for the neighbor together, but do things that that matter, right? That are helping society or helping out other people. Because it again instills that sense of resiliency in our kids, because the more we help others, the more resilient we become ourselves. Practice healthy strengths together, and we're going to highlight what those strengths are in just a few minutes, so you'll get to that one. Oh, and then use technology to your advantage. So there are some wonderful apps out there. I'm going to highlight 4 of them real quick that I'm aware of, although I want to specify there's plenty more out there. Calm and Headspace, or Calm, Insight Timer, and Headspace, I guess all 3 are wonderful apps on learning mindfulness and relaxation. They all kind of teach slightly different things, but similar premise of teaching mindfulness. They also, all 3 of these have a parent or a kids option, which I love. The more we teach coping skills to our kids, the easier those coping skills come to them when they're feeling stress or going through a difficult experience. So do some of these together, do some meditation together. 2 minutes, right? Do 2 minutes of meditation, because we all know that kids don't sit still very easily. But practice what that looks like. 2 minutes, or I see Derek's comment here, too much screen time. I totally get it. Turn the app on and then put the phone into the corner so you only hear it, and you just kind of sit there as a family together, and you breathe and you go through some of those exercises together. Or again, you can have your kids. I think Calm has the one specifically for kids. Insight Timer and Headspace, I believe, have programs for parents. But do some of these activities together. And then for the littles, Breathe, Think, Do with Sesame Street is so fun, because it teaches kids how to stop and take a breath and how to work through especially anger emotions. But it gives them that first introduction of, let's just take a breath, right? And let's figure out how we actually feel. And it's Sesame Street, so it helps. It's in their language, which is great. Other technology you can use is online supportive platforms. We're going to show one of them towards the end of here, but there are some programs you can go through that work on cognitive behavior techniques, things like that, to help normalize and work through some of those rough cognitions, rough thoughts, and how our behaviors relate to that. There's also virtual exercise groups and classes. So do yoga together, join a dance exercise group together and do that as a family. You can also have virtual family nights for families who don't live in the immediate area. So none of my family lives in Colorado. Everybody lives outside of Colorado. So we try to have a family night every once in a while where we all pop on Snapchat or a Zoom link or FaceTime. And we just talk, and we have a drink together. We celebrate a birthday, things like that. But it's a great way for us all to come together. And yeah, it's virtual, and that feels kind of wearing right now, especially a year later. But it's still a great reminder and a great way to get family time that I'm lacking and missing right now. So things to think about. And then that finally leads us into the Grit Resilience course. And great feedback here for the chat. If you are doing things that use technology or bring your family together, what are those things? Let's share them. Somebody just said cooking with kids is fun. Homemade elderberry syrup sounds wonderful. You guys are making me hungry. It's the evening. But share what are ways that you guys come together as families now. And then we're going to get into the Grit Resilience course. So grit was the other big reason why we're here today and talking with you. This is a free resource that is available to anyone in the country, anyone in the world. And it teaches you how to reach out and support other people in your community. And that includes your family, because your family is part of your community. Oh my gosh, I love all these things coming in. Cleaning out the chicken coop, Lacey, that doesn't sound fun. Except that you get good homemade eggs that way. If you're interested in the Grit course, I do recommend you check it out at letstalkgrit.com. That is where you can sign up, learn more information, and watch some videos about grit coaches and their experiences. Although we get to be privileged to have Latrina here, who will talk about her experience. Yes, I will. Bradley, can you add the link to Let's Talk Grit into the chat? So GRIT stands for Greater Resilience Information Toolkit, but mostly we just wanted to use the name GRIT, and then we figured out what could it stand for. But it is a program that works on strengthening individual resiliency and equips people to coach other people in their social group. And when we say coach, we don't necessarily mean like a wellness coach or a health coach. What we mean is when you look back at your life and you think about the coaches you have had in your life, what have been the qualities, right? Typically, a good coach is somebody who is motivating, who pushes you in a good way, who walks beside you, and who gets you resources when you need them, right? So when we embody that, that's the kind of spirit we're looking for in the GRIT program. We do have more than 1,900 people who have signed up. That's across the country. Half of them do come from El Paso County, but we have coaches in 42 different states and 8 different countries, which is mind-boggling amazing. So we have a big GRIT community at this point as well. It's grounded in the science of empowerment, which means that it's not intended to be in place of a therapy or a counseling appointment or anything like that. It's more of just how do we support each other. And the GRIT program teaches you how to do that. So it teaches you how to provide emotional support, how to build that resilience, encourage other people, motivate the people around you, reassure people that, again, we're all going through stress right now and the stress you're experiencing is okay. And then we pack it with resources, as many as we could think of to send out to support yourself and support your community. So I'm going to let Bradley real quick, if you want to go through these ones and just talk about what does the GRIT course provide?
So the GRIT course provides, again, I am going to read verbatim just so that way I have the facts on there, but I'll talk a little bit more. But it's a free 5-hour total training that's self-paced. So the nice thing about this is, normal trainings, right? You have to sit there, listen to us talking nonstop. The nice thing about this is you can go at your own pace. You can watch 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. Maybe you just do, an hour straight and you're going to come back the next day to do the next one. So it really is at your pace. So that way, especially with kids, right, and having to take care of families, it gives you that flexibility. There are also 4 different tracks available. So that way, depending on what you are needing and what you are looking for this to be involved in, you are able to meet that need for what it needs to be. And so again, there's coaches, there's trainers, practitioners. So there's a whole slew. And then one of the other things that I really liked about this training, so when I went through the training myself, what was really great is, I would have it on my cell phone. So I was able to literally just going on a walk with my kids. I could have one headphone in and listening the entire time and watching the video. So it's nice. You don't have to be stuck in your house. Now the foundational information is on core principles of psychological first aid, stress, disaster stress, resilience, and self-efficacy, as well as self-care and referring to professional mental health support when needed. Basically what this means is that, we cover a lot of information within this course to really help people figure out, how do I create resilience? How do I cope with everything that is going around? But also, how do I know when to refer to a mental health professional? Because again, with the GRIT course, we are not trying to replace mental health therapists or professionals. This is more of an adjunct support to hopefully, in theory, make it so maybe you don't need a therapist, but knowing when to refer to a therapist or a mental health professional for that additional support when you need to. Now, the 5 steps in reaching out and making a meaningful and helpful connection. So this really talks about figuring out how do we, in a meaningful way, and that's the key word here is meaningful, reach out to people and form those connections. How do we do that in a way that creates a positive interaction rather than a interaction of maybe feeling judged or feeling forced to do things? So it really helps figure out, how do I talk to people in a way that is going to bring them to us rather than bringing them away from us or feeling like there's pressure or judgment on there. And so the other nice thing with this course is we do a lot of role plays in this. So that way, instead of us just saying, hey, read this material and just know what to do, we actually show you live how to actually have these conversations, how to engage in that dialogue, and how to have those meaningful conversations. Because I think that's one of the things that I really like about this course is, a lot of times when you go to trainings, people tell you, okay, well, you're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But I want to know how to actually do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and not just in a mock way that isn't realistic, but in a more realistic of, here's what this would look like if I was if if I was struggling. And then self-reflections for personal enhancement. So we really like to help people self-reflect, to recognize within themselves what is working, what am I doing better, what can I do better, what do I want that to look like? So that way, again, we can empower people to enhance for themselves, right? And so getting rid of those expectations of this is how it should be, and to instead, this is what I need it to be. And then we also go over the 6 key areas of strength to identify and encourage in self and others. So really helping to identify what are those strength-based resources in each person and how to bring those out. And this last piece, and this is what I think is the most important, is we have a plethora of resources. So the nice thing is there's so much additional information on there of how to find resources within the community that you need and what's going to be helpful.
And then we also do provide a weekly survey and monthly community newsletter to try to keep everybody together, answer questions, and share more of those resources as we come across them. When we say we, it's me and Bradley. So the 4 tracks that we have available, we have a Grit community one. It's simply called Grit if you find it. And that one, it has all of that core information in it that was just covered in that last slide. As you can see on the picture here, this is exactly how it's presented. So it is, a pre-recorded video, but that way you can all watch it at your own self pace. Again, maybe that's 20 minutes here or there. Maybe that's the whole couple hours at one time. But it is led by experts in the field. So there's myself, Dr. Charles Benight, again, he's a lead researcher on self-efficacy. And then Dr. Joe Ruzek actually ran the National Center for PTSD for a long time. He's quote unquote retired now, which just means he gets to work for us now. But the other courses as we'll get into too are also led by experts in the field. So the next one we have is Grit for Ed. This is the one that I recommend most towards parents and towards anybody that works in the education field, because we'll talk about what does stress look like in youth in different age ranges, and how can you support different age ranges in those conversations and through that stress. So if this is a program you're interested in, I recommend either the Grit or the Grit for Ed track. They're all free though, they're all 5 hours. Grit Lead is for any business owners or leaders in the community to learn how to support their workforce and support their employees. And then Grit for Health is our newest one, centered on healthcare workers and how can we support our healthcare workers who are feeling some special stress right now. The five principles of psychological first aid, we of course go into this in much more detail in the training, but these are basically 5 ways that have been researched to help us support a community and help us get through disasters. And the pandemic at this point is considered a disaster. So those 5 areas are: how do you maintain your own personal sense of safety? How do you physically and mentally calm yourself? How can you connect with other people? And we talk about how you can connect virtually right now. How do we build hope for the future and maintain that hope? And then lots on self and collective efficacy, which an hour ago we kind of talked about what does that look like. We expand on that quite a lot in the training. The 6 key areas of strength that we go over include positive mood boosting activities, social connections and support, healthy eating and drinking, sleeping, exercise, and relaxation. So within the training, we talk about how do you ask these kinds of questions towards the people around you, whether again, that's your kids, your neighbor, your coworkers, whoever that might be. How do you ask, how's your eating and sleeping going? How's your exercise going? What we've tended to do just as a society is we tend to have these conversations where we might say like, hey, Bradley, how you been? And Bradley might say, yeah, things are fine. And then I say, oh, great, have a great day, right? And we have this little snippet of a conversation. And we might feel like, yeah, I checked in with Bradley today, but I didn't really, right? So what Grit teaches us to do is to say, hey, Bradley, how are you really doing today? I know I've been stressed. How are you sleeping? Because I've been sleeping like funky, right? So how are you doing? And then providing some resources if and when Bradley says, yeah, I've been sleeping terrible. So for all 6 of these areas, we provide, how is your soul? Oh, Kelly, I love that question. Oh my gosh. I'm so thrown off by that now. I love that question. So for each of these areas, we expand on it. We talk about what does it look like. We also provide an appendix in our workbook. So when you sign up for the training, you also receive a PDF of a 50 to 70 page workbook, depending on which one you signed up for. And in that workbook is an appendix for each of these 6 areas, so that if you have identified somebody who's not sleeping well, you can give them resources. Or if that person is you, you can look at those resources and see if there's anything you can add to your regime or talk to your friend or your community about adding some of these healthy tips and tricks. So again, each of these 6 areas of strength, we pack resources in for it as well. And then we do go over a variety of technology-based resources. I already kind of covered those a few slides back, but it also includes websites, podcasts, audiobooks, supportive online platforms, and a lot more apps as well. Okay, and now we get to meet Latrina. So Latrina, if you want to pop on real quick and just simply share your experience. Why did you sign up for Grit Coach? And what has your experience been with it in the past? I mean, we're again almost a year now.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. My experience, well, Grit was actually brought to me when they were initially getting everything set up. So I took the Grit training before like the website was completed, just all the back end. But for me, Grit training, it's helped me. When I initially started it, I thought it was going to help me more with my business, but it actually helped me more with my kids, especially my oldest. Because, you know, just like everyone, I'm a parent. I have 4 kids. I was stressed out for a long time. I was stressed out. And for a little bit, you know, coming home, I didn't want to be at home because it was just stressed at home. When I was going to work, I was stressed. You know, for a little bit, I wasn't putting my kids' concerns first. So the Grit training, I feel like it helped me to you know, have those healthy conversations with my kids, to actually sit down, play more video games with them, to go walking. There was a story I was telling about my oldest son to another group of people. You know, he's a middle schooler, 8th grader. He hasn't been around his friends for a long time. This was when the corona really got heavy in the beginning, and, you know, school just went away out of nowhere, as like, you know, teachers were sent home, kids were sent home, they were at home. But yeah, after a while, after going through the Grit training, you know, I realized my oldest son, he was depressed. He wasn't really going outside much. He was on the video games. There was days where we would take the video games away from him and he would still stay in his room. But after taking the Grit training, I realized the first thing was to make the connection. That's the number one rule of Grit, make the connection. So it was asking him those healthy questions like, how's your sleep? Have you been sleeping? Are you going to sleep late? And then I would just ask him questions that weren't open-ended. So like she said before, so he wasn't, because before I would just be like, how are you doing? And he would just be like, I'm good. And the conversation would end right then and there. But now I ask him more questions like, how are you eating? What type of foods are you eating? So he's actually giving me more feedback. And then there's times where he doesn't want to talk. Grit taught me not to push, but to make sure I'm constant and be like, okay, I'll come back and talk to you later, and make sure you go back and talk to him. So, you know, I'll give him a little time. I'll say, how are you doing? He'll give me his little pushback. So I'll say, I'll come back and check on you later. So I'll leave, come back and check on him later. And it was funny because a couple of weeks ago, he was like, man, you really do come back and check on me when you say that. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I got to make sure you're good. But for him, it was getting him back on a routine. So I really followed the Grit training to the T of making the connection, asking the healthy questions, identifying the coping strength. For him, he was just out of routine. He didn't have his friends. He didn't have school. Basketball ended. So he did like most kids. He was depressed, didn't have anything to do. So once we got him back on a routine, he was waking up in the morning, going on his walks. He started eating more healthy. You know, now school's back, so he has a little bit more social aspect to life. But I would say the Grit, it really helped me identify I would say mainly the questions, because, you know, as a parent, sometimes we don't ask the right questions. So grit really did help me to ask the right questions. So I recommend grit to all my friends. And I think everyone should take it, because it's just that it's easy. It's only 5 hours, and I actually sat down and took it for the full 5 hours. So it's really not hard. But yeah, that's my experience with grit. I feel like every parent should be able to take it. And it provides a lot of resources. I have friends that they come to me now and they're like, you just know where to send us. And I'm just like, yeah. And Nicole sends a lot of resources. We have the workbook. She's always sending the contact updates. So yeah, that's my experience with grit. So if you guys get the chance, I think everyone should try to take it. It's amazing. It helped me, especially with my son. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak tonight, Nicole.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your own story as well. And can you tell us how old are your kids? What's your age?
Yeah, I have a 4-year-old, 8, 9, and 13. So it really helped me with my 13-year-old, especially for us to connect a little bit better, because he was angry for a time there and I didn't know what was going on. And like I said, the questions really helped our relationship out a lot.
And what a few of you were mentioning in the chat too is people might feel a little uncomfortable really sharing. And that's kind of the point, right? Because we're not used to that. We don't live in a society where we really often sit down and say, no, really, how are you doing? So what grit does is gives people permission to share, permission to talk about it. And again, we provide, hopefully, I think, we provide the structure of how to have those conversations. So easier said than done, right? But that's what the course breaks down and really teaches you how to have those conversations. As Latrina said, how to follow up when somebody says, I don't want to talk about it right now. That's fine. I'll follow up with you next week and we'll check in again. But you know, it's not just accepting that things are okay, right? Again, I'll use another therapy example that my client likes to tell me things are good. And I said, we don't get to use that word anymore because I want to know more. So we don't just get to say things are fine, right? I want to know, how are you actually doing? How's your sleep? How's your eating? What's going on for you, right? So grit provides those kinds of questions and structures. I think somebody said in here, I want those questions. Sign up for the training then. We'll provide them for you. They're all in the workbook. They're in the training. And again, it is free. It is 5 hours, I know feels like a lot of time, but that's why we broke it down into videos. So Bradley, I think when you were watching that, you had mentioned you would watch like 20 minutes at a time, right? And then it was 5 hours later and you were through it.
Yeah, like literally, guys, I kid you not, like I would literally be walking and just watching it on my phone. I would just have it in my pocket. I remember this one time, I don't even remember what I was doing. I had to wait at a business for like 45 minutes. Oh, I was getting my tire changed. That's what it was. I'm just sitting there waiting, had nothing to do. And I literally just was listening the whole time. And it was the perfect way to do that because it was like, I had to sit here. I wasn't in the mood to read a book. And so I was like, boom, I'll just do that instead. And I was able to watch an entire video while waiting.
Yep. Thank you. So we definitely encourage you to check it out. Again, it's letstalkgrit.com. Deborah sent out a flyer. It's also on the flyer, so you can check it out there as well. And then as we wrap up, because I know only have you guys, and this has just been so amazing. Deborah told us to expect interaction, but I've been blown away. So I just want to wrap up real quickly. MyResilienceHelp.com is one of the resources we go over much more in depth within the training. This is another free program that we offer through UCCS. And it talks about, again, how do we build our own resilience? This is also, MyResilienceHelp.com is available completely in Spanish. And so I know I had a question up here earlier asking if the GRIT program is. Unfortunately, it's not yet. We need a little bit more funding to make that happen, but we are working on it. And that is one of our big goals, is to be able to translate it all in Spanish. But MyResilienceHelp.com is completely available in Spanish, and is a nice other foundation of building resilience. Carla, is it closed captioning? They're all of the videos have been converted to YouTube links, private YouTube links. So as long as you turn on closed captioning on that video, then yes, you get closed captioning. And then, as I mentioned as well, there's a workbook that you'll get, and the workbook has everything in the training in it as well. Okay. Okay, whew. Last few things is if you check out our website, grit.uccs.edu, we provide a bunch more resources, resources for different occupations, Keys to Grit, which is a video cast series of interviews with some of the mental health professionals in our area. Silver Cloud is another online platform completely free for El Paso County, and the website will give you more information about that. And then it's another way to sign up for the course. Yes, I will type in the resilience course, the link, and you do get a certificate once completed, actually. It is an automatic certificate, but if you would like it customized, you send me an email and I customize it for you that day. So you can do that as well. Really briefly, in my last minute or two, I want to highlight that El Paso County has just been phenomenal in supporting us through this. It's why a lot of our programs have been able to be and maintain free. So I wanted to mention that we are also supported with Aspen Point and NAMI in creating a new crisis plan for El Paso County that we're calling the El Paso County Method. So, watch for more information about that, but it's just an example of how our amazing communities coming together to support each other. I think that's a question. Okay. Whew, I feel like I just ran a marathon there, guys. We have a little bit of time, I think, for questions, although I know Deborah needs to do attendance and some other things as well. I want to thank you guys so incredibly much for tuning in, for sharing, for really being open with each other. I'm blown away by this group. And it's 8 o'clock on a Thursday night, and you guys have been so interactive and attentive. I really want to thank you. I hope this is helpful. I'll plug in a few more of those links real quick as Deborah wraps up, but feel free. I left our email there, grit@uccs.edu. Send us some emails. Let us know how things are going, what we can do to support you. This is our jam. This is what we do. So again, thank you for inviting us. Thanks for letting us talk. I will hand it over to Deborah and answer any questions I can in the chat.
Wow, let's give Nicole, Bradley, and Latrina some appreciation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One of my parents said this is the best training we've ever had. So timely, so useful. So we certainly appreciate it. We knew that this topic would be one that our families certainly needed at this time, and hopefully everybody has walked away with 1 or 2 nuggets that you can apply to yourselves. Some of that taking time for yourself, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, however much time you can do that, as well as how to work effectively with your scholars. So thank you all for certainly joining us tonight. So we have a couple of celebrations that we want to highlight. So I know that we've had 3 babies in the last couple of months, and Kelly Johnson had a little boy, and Bree Lucas, I think, had a little girl, and Chanel Green, but I don't know what she had. So Chanel, what did you have? Carla?
I had a little girl.
Okay.
Her name is Zila.
All right. Have there been any other babies? Okay. We want to just always recognize those that are bringing more into the Parents Challenge fold family. And so we're excited about that. And then for our door prizes, well, I'll do the door prizes last. As you know, every family is required to do 6 sessions for the year, 3 in the fall, 3 in the spring. But we've got some overachievers in our organization. And so we've got a number of families that have not only done the 6 required, but they have done 9 or more sessions. And for those families, we are going to send a $50 gift card to you. And here are their names, because I think that deserves some appreciation. Even though We're doing this remote or virtual, and we have families that even when we do them in person, exceed the expectations. But these families have just done extraordinary. So Delia Carter, 14 sessions. Melinda Green, 12 sessions. Eva Henry, 11 sessions. Sierra Spencer, 11 sessions. Tabitha Raines, 11 sessions. Ashley Hardin, 9 sessions. Michelle Illifelt, 9 sessions. And Aisha Young, 9 sessions. So let's just give them some appreciation, because it takes a lot of effort to attend these sessions, and we applaud you, we thank you, we appreciate you. These sessions are for you, and we hope that everybody takes away good information from it that you can use with your family. So tonight we've got 4 door prize winners, and they are Lene Diaz, Sean Dooley, Angelica Jimenez, and Jesse Smith. So because of we do everything virtual now, you will receive your gift prize, your door prizes electronic. So we're not mailing anything out to anyone, but those are our 4 door prize winners tonight. Families, we had 131 folks online tonight, and that is exceptional. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. We have done attendance, so you don't have to wait for a roll call to get through all 130 of you on tonight. But again, if we can do anything to support you, please let us know. We can't read your minds. We don't know what's happening. You have to reach out to us. We've been trying to provide individual resources to families as you've requested, but please let us know. We don't want you hurting and suffering needlessly if we can do something to stand in the gap. We had our board meeting yesterday, and I think I sent you guys a note that during November and December, we raised over $360,000 to support Parents Challenge for the remainder of this year and next year as well. And we are extremely pleased with those that continue to contribute to this organization, because that allows us to support each and every one of you. So again, let us know how we can support you. Let us know the things that you may need, and from there, we can get through this together. So again, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Latrina, for being with us tonight and making our first session for spring 2021 a success. And please send us the activities, because I will send that out in a email message to all of our families, so that they will have that to do with their in their homes. So again, thank you all for being here tonight. Have a good evening. We'll see you Saturday, hopefully. Let us know again if you need tickets for the movie. And please log in and see all the sessions that are coming up. They're all going to be powerful sessions this semester, and we look forward to seeing you. Have a great evening.